Welcome to this Cordis webinar in association with Britvic plc. Today's webinar will explore how Britvic implemented the myFIDoc application to improve governance and control over their financial ledger and automate journal entries with a mobile workflow solution. We will begin the webinar with an introduction to Cordis Solutions by the co-founder Ramesh Vasani and an introduction to Britvic plc by today's guest, IT Delivery Director Andrea Crochet. This will be followed by a walkthrough by Andrea to share the experience on how Britvic made use of the myFIDoc in their bigger journey of financial transformation, and then a live demonstration of the application by Ramesh. Finally, we will be hosting a live Q&A session with today's audience.
Our focus has been very much so to help organizations get a better return on investment. So let me just tell you a little bit about Cordis Solutions and their purpose in life. It's, again, as I said, helping organizations get more for less, thing which we all talk about in these days of austerity. How do I get better returns on my investment in SAP? How do I get my people to use my systems? How do I get them to use it straight away, so therefore I'm not having to force them and police them? And if all of those things happen, then obviously you get improved control, compliance, productivity, efficiency, and that's what we're trying to do. The other thing which we're also trying to do with these applications, and again, Andrea will show how it's affected his organization and the people that has changed. People's habits have changed. They want to do things when they want to do it. They want to do it in a mobile environment. And what we're trying to do is give people the option to be able to work in that mobile environment with tools which they can use on their phones, on their laptops, and so on. So that's basically our raison d'etre in terms of Cordis Solutions. The other thing which, when we do build our applications, what we're trying to do is, there was a lovely survey done by Ashridge Management Studies, and they said, look, there are 5 real big reasons when business process fails. And out of those 5 big reasons, I suspect, and maybe you can agree or we can have a discussion later on, having simplification and having simple apps to do the job can help us address 4 of them. If the app is simple, training is much easier, or even non-existent, because the app's simple and easy to use. If the app actually embodies a procedure or the process, then the procedural clarity is there, and people don't make mistakes, and they don't need to be told this is what you need to do. If the app is easy to follow and find, and it's on my phone or my laptop with a simple favorites link or whatever, then I don't need to remember my password and find excuses that I can't do it because I don't know where to do it. The 4th reason which people gave was, you got the wrong people. The app, I'm afraid, doesn't help with if you've got the wrong people. If you've got the wrong people, it's an HR situation, you just need to do something with them. And the last reason which Ashridge found was communication and update. Well, people make mistakes or don't follow processes because what you've told them is out of date. Well, if it's a web application and it's going to be updated by the client side, then it will always be current and there won't be any need to reinstall anything. So that's one of the, hopefully, some of the values that we have in the application and the way it makes and addresses some of the bigger problems that people in business actually face. On that note, I'm now going to hand over to Andrea to tell us a little bit about Britvic and his journey.
Okay, so to set some context in terms of Britvic. So Britvic's largely a UK company, so we operate in the drinks industry where we are the largest supplier from a stills perspective and number 2 from a carbonated. But we also operate in some significance in both Ireland and France, and more recently in Brazil, where we've expanded through 2 acquisitions. Our management team is very much focused on a strategy to expand through innovation. This is development of new product and kind of extending some of the sectors that we're in. And this is through both new brands and new products. We're a FTSE 250 with an ambition to grow and start to become kind of a larger part and hopefully a FTSE 100 in the near future. Okay, so in terms of kind of our requirements and kind of what has brought us to myFIDocs, so we've had a growing finance function through the acquisitions, and we still operate very much in a centralized manner in terms of finance as a function. we needed to actually find.
So when you say centralized, Andrea, do you mean something like a shared service environment?
We have a shared service environment, but also we consolidate a number of different companies into one, and that's done through one central location. So we have different business needs, but largely through kind of a central force. If you look at our requirements, we're trying to build kind of an application to be able to cover key functionality in order to ensure that our accounting is done correctly. We use a current product, but we're looking to kind of enhance our capability in that product. We need to make sure that we can operate from within Excel, because most of our finance team very much reside in Excel. But we need to push them and get them to kind of accept a progression into more of a web front end. In terms of our business case, we have two internally developed kind of SAP upload programs. The challenge around that is there's a level of familiarity of the programs and a nuance around them that we have to bring any new member of the team up to speed with. We also struggle from a controls perspective. There's no element of control in terms of posting incorrectly a journal, and we need to address that, given it being an audit risk that's been flagged for a number of years. We also lastly wanted to improve visibility of manual postings. There was a clear efficiency kind of lens in terms of ensuring that our processes working as they needed rather than having to be corrected at period end. In terms of business justification, to kind of replay that from a business case perspective, we have control issues. We need to make sure that we had the right governance in terms of approvals. There was an expectation that our volumes of journals was higher than expected, and that was definitely the case. So there was very much a challenge in terms of reducing that and ensuring our processes work more consistently. Our SAP tool was inflexible and required a number of steps to execute, and the traceability and audit trail around who was posting where was limited, and it was normally after the event. So why Cordis Solutions? So we looked at the market and looked at kind of what other tools are out there. I think what sold us is, we're looking for a standard application that helps us post, our general ledger journals. We're familiar kind of with the capability, but we need to challenge ourselves to kind of progress this. The solution's got reporting functionality, which we think is important because we want to keep a close track of effectively where we are in terms of what journals are being posted and the volumes. And the workflow tasks give us that auditability, which is kind of what we need to ensure to make sure that the governance is in place. In terms of the business justification, we're looking for a level of autonomy amongst our users such that they can actually post journals, but that these need to ensure that they've got the right level of governance, particularly where there are value thresholds that start to become substantial, and therefore we need to make sure we run the right approval on top. We also wanted to find a solution that required a minimal amount of training. Our user base on a more complex side has struggled with trying to understand kind of why we need to do things in different ways through different tools. So we're trying to consolidate that understanding and simplify it. We're trying to, through reporting, challenge the volume of journals that we're putting in and reduce the human error by putting some auditability and some controls in terms of sign-off to avoid the level of corrections we have to do during period close to amend any erroneous postings. We've got a key issue around timeliness, so a lot of the journals get posted during the back end of the period end process. So one of the key finance requirements was to make sure that we had a turnaround time in terms of posting those journals, but we couldn't forego the auditability behind that. So in terms of the walkthrough, what I was looking to do is take you through effectively a walkthrough through some scenarios in terms of how we're using the tools. You'll see that effectively the branding is in line with Britvic, and we'll start with retrieving data from history. So one of the key benefits we see is the fact that the solution integrates with SAP, so we can, for example, select a company code from a list, and we don't have to effectively run the risk of that being incorrect. We can enter fiscal year and period, and then look to get the data, which is effectively a snapshot of any journals that we've posted previously. This is important rather than having to rely on the document being somewhere on my local drive or on a shared drive. I can select the document and effectively use that as a template for a new document that I want to enter. I would then go in and modify the entries as appropriate. So in this case here is modifying the values. Okay, obviously we then go back and clear the document number, given we have to create it, put an appropriate posting and document date, and a reference if that needs to be amended. We would then look to submit the document, and this would effectively put the document into a process workflow. If I go back into my document history and refresh it, I will then see that new document come up. Okay. A key feature also is the ability to attach a file. So this is, again, part of the governance and auditability. So if there's any backing information that I need to be able to attach to the journal, which is key to the approval, I will then select it and attach it, and that will then appear in the request for approval. Okay, so this is now a view from an approver perspective in terms of how you would see approving a document. You get an email sent with a link. I would access the link, and this is the view that you would then get from a web perspective. I would select the document to approve, and then go through a level of review of the elements that go with that as a document. I can look at the attachments and look at the supporting information for that particular journal. Yeah, this gives me the audit trail in terms of who's been involved and the times, and then I can go through and approve it with an opportunity to make it an appropriate comment. Okay, and you get a confirmation effectively around the success of the workflow. Okay, what are the other key elements of the functionality is reversing an approved document. What happens a lot of times with the GL upload tools is you end up copying the previous document and reverse the signs, but you run the risk that sometimes you end up with the wrong postings. So what this allows me to do is actually select a document that I've previously posted and select to reverse it, obviously selecting a reason for reversal and the actual posting date. Okay. And again, it tells you the document is posted, so it gives you reassurance that it's been posted. If I go into the document history tab and click to refresh the data, I will then see that that document's come through and is now in my overall history of any journals I've posted. Okay, to see kind of how those postings appear in SAP, I can go into SAP and look for that document. This should be quite familiar, but you'll effectively see the same entries that have come through. This is the reversal document.
Good. Anything else to add to that, Andrea?
No, I think it pretty much works, as expected. I think there's a usability and familiarity to it that I think users welcome. I think there's an immediacy to it that I think is also critical. And I think it also empowers some of our finance managers where, particularly the more significant journals, that they feel now more in control in terms of being able to understand what adjustments to be made and when they're being made.
And in terms of the value it's delivered, has it met with your expectations?
Yeah, I think like any change, I think the technology and the culture, one gets adopted earlier than the other. I think the culture has improved. I think we've raised a clear visibility on the number of journals and the criticality behind them. I think when you look at some of the journals, the materiality of some of the journals really wasn't that significant.
Okay.
And the reporting gives us that ability to start to challenge that. I think from a line manager perspective, we've agreed a threshold around which journals go for approval and which ones go through automatically. And again, I think the threshold we set was to try and send for approval 25% of our journals based on the value that we agreed. We'll be reviewing that just to make sure that we don't end up kind of overburdening our finance manager population with journals. I think the automated workflow gives us a clear audit trail. I think in terms of who's the requisitioner and ultimately who's then the approver. I think that's a critical part of it. From a security perspective, we're comfortable that all the exchanges are being done in a controlled and governed manner. The mobility is important because a lot of the approvals happen outside of the office. So if our finance managers have to approve something overnight, historically there'd have been a call, there'd been a log on or something which would have disrupted them. Now we can do that independently of that. And ultimately kind of we're very much kind of supporting kind of the change in terms of a culture around focusing on why we're journaling, when we're journaling, and supported by its efficiency.
Excellent. Guys, if you have any questions for Andrea, please jot them down and send them along. In the meantime, whilst you're doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a live demonstration of the system and show you a handful of features which we didn't sort of discuss right now. So again, very simple application. As soon as I launch my Excel, I see there's an add-on called myFIDoc. And basically, as Andrea did right now, showed us the little walkthrough. If I go over to a field and I go over and press value help, immediately I'm talking back to my SAP system and it's giving me back whatever's there. It helped me by typing in UK, it sort of narrows the search down. So here the idea behind this was the more we help our users get the right information in, the more accurate it's going to be. And therefore, the risk of doing corrections afterwards is reduced. And that's a key thing which you all want to do. Get accuracy straight away. So if I select that, it puts it in. By simply getting data, I'm pulling back the data back from SAP. And here's the real fun part. When I do bring back data from SAP, by simply, as I said, highlighting it and then going to the tab document entry, the key thing is I now can use everything which I'm familiar with in Excel by cutting and pasting. So if I wanted to create another line out of this, I simply just highlight these things, Control C, paste it, Control V, and that's it, I've done. I can now modify the amount. Obviously the amount is not right, so I can say, well, this is actually a credit of £4,110, and you know what, I really can't be bothered with the other currencies, so I'm going to take it out. I'm going to change this narrative to whatever narrative I want, call it live demo, and I simply say, right, fine, that's what I want to be the text. And today being the 16th, is it? Sept. Again, it's focusing on my format of how I use Excel. I don't need to follow whatever SAP is doing. This is the way I enter in dates. That's the way I'm entering in dates. He understands. And it's changing it across. And I simply press submit to send it in. And that's how easy journal entry should be. But at the same time, when I'm doing this thing, I want you to write this number down. I also want to show you some of the other things which the item can do and does, which is quite clever. It's again helping people get the right information. So this item was number 420. Okay, so I just say okay. If I'm at a cost center, right now it's giving me that thing over there called value help. If I press value help, it's giving me all the cost centers with a 2 in front of it. If I cancel that, and in the cost company code, I change that to become, say, company code with a 1000. And now look at the same field and do value help. All my prefixes of 1 are gone. So you can see the system is contextual. It doesn't tell me, it doesn't ask me unnecessary information. It knows from the line that I'm in, I'm trying to make a posting to company code 2000 or 1000, and it'll only give me cost objects relevant to that thing. Same goes for entering in general ledger codes. We say our people are clever, and they are, but they don't all remember all the information that they need to. So if I want to find a GL account and make sure my accuracy is improved, if I say, look, well, yeah, it's to do with travel. I type in travel, it gives me all accounts in travel. So again, I'm going to more likely to get it right first time around by doing this thing. The other thing Andrea mentioned was right now, yes, Britvic are only using it for GL postings. But the application has a propensity to actually do customers and vendors if I wanted to. So if I go to this line over here and I change the posting key to say 01 customers, and now I go to the account line and hit value help, suddenly it's giving me customers. So I can post to customers and vendors. It's actually a finance posting tool as opposed to a pure general ledger journal tool. And that's its flexibility. The other things you may notice, he's got a tab over here called multiple entry. Now, typically, you can say, well, hold on, most people should be doing journals and reviewing it one by one, because that improves the accuracy and the processing. Well, sometimes I may have I don't know, a big stock adjustment or a payroll to load up, or a pension provision to do. I can then do it through the multiple entry tab, and I can load them all up and I can put it in. So Andrea showed us about the attachments. Again, it's very simple. If I've created a journal, you can see the status of the items over here is with Mary. So again, if I look at the line that we just posted in, we posted an item right now called Get Demo. Was it? Live Demo. There it is, Live Demo. And is waiting for Mary to approve it. So Mary, in her email system, would get an email saying, look, Mary, there's an action for you to require. There's a journal notification for you to do, and here it is, item number 420. We can make this email as pretty or as informative as we want. But when she clicks on this link, it takes her straight to the web application where she can go in and approve that item straight away. So again, that's the beauty about the whole system. It's meant to be very simple, very easy to use, and anything. If I had put an attachment, I can see the attachment in my demonstration over here. Let's go back and let's put an attachment. So if I retrieve that document, and I'm now going to say, you know what, I forgot to give it attachment. Mary's going to reject this if she can't see any supporting documentation. To load it up is very simple. I just press the button, Add File. And I browse. Again, if I was doing this on the web application, it will allow me to pick up my emails. So not my email, my camera. And I can point my camera to point and look at the attachment. In this case, I'm going to upload a bank statement. I can do multiple attachments as well. So I'm just going to keep one right now, keep it simple, and away it goes. So it's uploaded, and I close it. Now if I were to go back to Mary, and she were to refresh this thing over here and look at this live demo, I simply press a refresh button by just pressing this over here. I'll see that now when I'm going back into this approval item, there's my attachment straight away. As I said, full audit trail. If I press this button over here, you can see Edith created the item, is submitted by Mary, fully timestamped. Mary can approve this, or if you wanted to, Mary can say, you know what, I am going to approve it, but this journal is above my pay grade, and I'm going to send it to somebody else. So what she can do is she can say, look, you know what, I'm going to send it to Mark. By simply selecting Mark, continue, and she approves it. She writes, above my pay grade, and she presses the button, approve. Now the beauty about this is, from a user perspective, Edith created this item, and Edith is expecting this journal to be approved by Mary. If now Edith were to refresh this item, she sees, look, it's actually now gone from Mary to Mark. So she knows who to chase. Going back to what Andrea said earlier on, a lot of the journals happen in the minutes, and I say minutes coming up to closing time for the period end. And if I now need to go find somebody to approve it, I know who to find. It's Mark, is the culprit. So the system is helping me identify where I need to go. And finally, one of the last things I want to quickly cover off, which we didn't get a chance to see from Andrea, is the dashboard. One of the useful things which Andrea mentioned is the reporting that they're currently doing. And here what we can do is I've got a little variant set up, and I'm just going to use that. So I'm going to say, look, show me all the documents that we created in 2016 for all the periods and generate a report for me. So suddenly the system is going into the system and it's telling me all the items that's been generated, what's been parked, what's been posted, what's been errored out, what's been directly posted, who did what, Edith, in this case, lots of Edith. Boy, I think poor Edith is the only person been No, there's a few items here from Mark, a few items from Ethan, from Logica. So you can see different people have been doing things. Any one of those items I want to look at, I simply press detail, and it shows me, okay, fine, that's what, in this case, it was a KR, and some of you guys who are familiar with KRs, that's an invoice, right? It's a vendor invoice. So it's a vendor invoice that's been come through. Yeah. So the system's totally agnostic, whether it's AP, AR, GL, is giving you full control. And if I was a controller, I can see a high-level view. Again, this is our demo system, as opposed to what we saw from the video that Andrea gave, where there would have been a bit more realistic information. But here you can see a lot of the stuff is error and rejected. But whereas in his real world, there'll be more items which are completed and pending. And that's the sort of high-level control that you want when you're running a business. Anything to add to that?
No, I think that the reporting is a big kind of improvement compared to the GL upload, because you'd have to go into some fairly technical parts of SAP to be able to get that visibility. And from a user perspective, that's not something that's very accessible.
Good. On that note, let's quickly carry on with our presentation. In terms of how long it took, this is actually an interesting question. The shortest time span we've done is another reference customer, a company called ArcelorMittal. They make steel in Chicago. There we actually got the system in, also talking to S4, as in the SAP latest system. We managed to put that in basically 2 weeks. The effort from our side in terms of man days effort was 25 days. Typically, I suppose when people ask us for, how can we help them with their benefit case, we quote some of the examples that some of our customers have shared with us and say, look, depending on the size of an organization, statistically, we've found that for every 100 person engaged in journal entry, we've found it can save you 17 man days per month. And that's quite a sizable number. Now, some people may be saving half a day, some people may be saving a couple of hours. Is adding up those half a days and couple of hours come up to 17 man days. Hopefully, a reasonable saving. But the saving is not just all. The key thing is what we all have in a limited quantity we can't get back of. Time. The biggest saving is in time. Time, accuracy, getting it done. The fact that it's very easy to use, they can do it very quickly, and it means things get done very quickly. It means that those organizations aspiring to reduce their period close from whatever it is today to world-class or best-in-class, depending on who you talk to, whether it's 2 days, 4 days, or 7 days, that's where you want to adhere to. On that note, again, as I said, we're going to shift over to our questions and answer session. We're running a little bit ahead of time, so we've got probably an opportunity to answer a few questions. So we've got a couple of items coming through. The first one, I think, Andrea, it's more related to you.
Yeah, so the first question is, can you tell us a little bit more about the user adoption? So I think the challenge with the user adoption is that we have quite a cross-section of users, some more or less familiar with SAP. And so the way that we've looked at this is effectively try to engage them on an understanding and potentially a reset on their previous experience of ultimately this is a capability. I think the user adoption, and we went live about 3.5 months ago, has been excellent. I think in pockets we've had some resistance where there was a familiarity with the tool, but once they got to a level of understanding and realized the benefits in terms of the time saving and the accuracy, there was quite a quick move. The intention from a Britvic perspective is that we're fully committed on using myFIDoc, and we'll only use the GL upload as a fallback in case we're in a disaster recovery type situation for whatever reason that the tool's not working. And that's a clear kind of priority that we've given across the business. So far, no pushback from the users. If anything, they realize there's a big step change in terms of what they were previously doing and the level of visibility and understanding of kind of how the tool works versus that.
Excellent. The next question I'm going to go on to is about the infrastructure. We have a question is saying, what infrastructure does this solution require? Now, if I quickly go through, the infrastructure is relatively simple. It's not that complicated. You've got your backend SAP system. In the middle, you've got either a gateway system sitting on a cloud platform or an on-premise situation. And then in the Excel side, you've got the Excel add-on. So it's O365 or SAP UI5 as a thing. And most organizations would have obviously the ECC system in place and a NetWeaver gateway in place. So it's simply a question of just slotting those two things in, getting them to talk to each other, putting the connectivity configuration in, and then you're more or less up and running.
Okay. Another question that came up is how much time was spent and what effort was required to commit to from a training perspective to get people to use the system? I think the training time, we committed effectively a 1 hour session with users. This was led by effectively someone who had trained, who was effectively our key user for the area. The intention behind this was to kind of build some knowledge and cement that within different parts of the business. What we've seen pretty much from the onset is, and we've been monitoring this through the number of postings and how they've been made, was that people have moved very quickly to myFIDoc. I think, from a familiarity and use perspective, everyone has welcomed how much that take on has been easier than they expected. I think the fact that it's in Excel, has been a massive win for them. And I think the integration back to SAP to be able to validate fields again, has saved some frustration where this would only be visible when the journal was uploaded.
Yeah, and then you get an error message, you have to do it all over again.
Yeah,
I think that's a very valid point, and I think that's the beauty about something that's integrated as opposed to interfacing. On that note, thank you for being a good audience. If you do need to know a bit more about us, there is another series of webinars that we're doing in terms of how we're saving time in master data, in approvals. You can also join them as well. The master data webinar is on Thursday, the 19th of October, and I'm sure the guys will send you a link to invite you to that. Again, thank you for your patience, and look forward to seeing you or hearing from you in the future.
Thank you.